communicators. So let's do quickly about our intellectual or logical listener. And the logical listeners or intellectual listener, maybe from the heading, everyone loves to become an intellectual listener, or 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 I remember, or anybody can remember, when anybody give you a very good argument, and then our response is, oh, very logical. Oh my God, what a logical argument she is presenting. Now I understand that what this topic is about, why this is important. So as an audience or as a listener, when anybody logically or intellectually or very in a deep or different understanding, when they are listening or when they are talking, we really praise them, isn't it? Mostly, yeah, especially when our teacher, when they are giving some argument while they are teaching in the classroom, and if the logic of the teacher about a particular point in their subject is very, very convincing, then we start to fall in love with the teacher's method of teaching. Oh, what a superb method of teaching. Oh, what a logical way he or she has explained this complicated phenomena with a very simple way, or blah, blah. Of course, this is impressive, but there is problem. There is a big problem with the logical people and intellectual people. And that is the point we need to be aware. And if we are trying to be intellectual or logical speaker or listener in our personal or public life, then we have to be very careful that the negative impact of being intellectual or the logical listener may have a very bad consequences on a communication or in terms of the building relationship, that I must avoid it. Why? Anybody has idea why intellectual or logical listeners are not good for communication, or especially they are very poor listener? Why? Just a random thought. Maybe you can think any or let me see who's in
maybe
this
they're
Facebook.
I don't know, would they be like quite critical unless you're being very factual? You know, maybe you're just sharing your thoughts, you know, your feelings or something that's not very factual, and that might be hard for them to digest or agree with, and then maybe they're critical.
But must be critical. Okay. When you say the critical, it does mean that they become too
Like almost
emotional or
dismissive,
without
like, you
emotional?
know, or maybe dismissive because that's not their language. They want facts, they want factual details. They're not necessarily interested in
Emotions.
yeah, I guess emotions and like personal thoughts.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, Jenny.
I so agree with that, Rock. I think as an intellectual and logical listener that somebody can just state things and maybe it's not received so well from someone that could even be hurt by that, and feel criticized, even where the person, have you ever been around somebody where they just say something and it's kind of cold and you almost can't believe they just said that, and you don't kind of know how to react because they just stated a fact, and you just think, wow, that was rude, or but the person doesn't even know it was rude. They don't mean it that way, but they just came out with it thinking no one was going to respond. They thought that they would respond logically, and the person is hurt now by what they just said.
Excellent. Yeah, it is one of the reason. Yeah, we are very close to point out. Let me ask on Facebook. Hello, hi Doha Deva. If you can answer, you can type here as well. I can read it for you for our audience as well. Okay, let's go and dig out what is wrong with the intellectual logical listener, even though they are very thoughtful. The problem is the intellectual and illogical people are very too much literally people. So they have a they only accept the verbal understanding what being said during the talk. So they are just focusing what is being said word to word, sentence to sentence, and they most of the time neglect the passion, the emotion behind uh, that verbal communicator of the talker. So because of lack of non-verbal understanding of the speaker, they often take the words too literally, so they become too narrow-minded, and hence the talker have to be show their upset behavior, that why you are not talking, or you did not understand me. I tell you one of the example which I had. I watched a YouTube video, a dialogue between David Hawking, who is a very famous atheist, uh, and Sadhguru, who is a worldwide Indian spiritual teacher. So both were talking with each other, or going about existence of God. And sorry, not the Sadhguru, uh, Deepak Chopra, Dr. Deepak Chopra. So both were arguing about the existence of God. Now, the Deepak Chopra, he is a believer. He he is trying to, uh, saying the words for the favor of existence of God with so many other nonverbal communicating indicators. The whole, uh, but the David Hawking was only noticing what he is saying instead of the background from, or instead of the knowing where Deepak Chopra was coming from actually. So that was a limitation, which, and that's why the conversation got little uh, partial, and he started to insulting Deepak Chopra, David Hawking, because Deepak Chopra, according to David Hawking, Dawkins, he was taking his whole argument of existence of God as a tale story, as a fairy tale story, which was very, very insulting. But um, because he was not getting the point what the Dr. Deepak Chopra was doing. So, so that is one of the reason that non-verbal awareness of the intellectual people they do. Um, and we know very well that what is a verbal communication. Verbal communication is usually with the words, and maximum you can shake hand, and communication of arguments, or sharing logics, or some presenting some notes, some graphical explanation, and that is enough. But usually the listener or the watcher of that communication miss the crux of the purpose of the whole communication, and that was it is dangerous, and they don't understand, they become too narrow. Why? Now look at the statistics. The non-verbal communication impacts 65% on our whole overall communication, and only the 35% verbal communication, like the words, sentences, make the communication uh, serve the purpose. So look at the person who is only believing on verbal text and stuff like that, and as a listener, when he or she will focus on 35% success rate of the communication process. What the value of his or her verdict will be is very less, isn't it? So, a non-verbal being facial expression, tone of voice, movement, appearance, eye contact, gesture, posture, body language, dressing, and background. And there is also, you can add the semantics as well. You can add here as well, because many people have a very different meaning of certain words, which the other listener take too literally. Let's say when I am saying he's a god of the world, so some person may take that God as too literally, uh, that someone who is the uh, like the proper God which we know. But many people don't take word God as a God. They have a perception about word God in many small or wide range. So if we are talking about the God with those people who knows the different type of level of God's word we use as a text while we are communicating, we feel very comfortable with them. Instead of a very narrow-minded person, if we use the word God, then they will take the word of God too literally, and hence the communication purpose of the talker will never be achieved. And end of the conversation, there will be conflict remain, and that is a problem with a lot of listeners. They take too much literally. We have a very good example as well, and that does not last on our world, in our what is called our offices or in a talk show, or it also impact on marriages. And we have a quick story about the Frank. The Frank is a computer programmer, and he is too much intellectual and takes everything very logically. Even when he is at home, when he is dealing with the wife, when he is dealing with the children, he is too much listen as an intellectual, and he does not regard other non-verbal communication of his wife, of his children. Hence, his marriage is in danger, because he does not understand completely what his wife is actually meant to say, or her children, or his children. Hence, now his marriage is at the verge of divorce because of his too much narrowness. Even though he is intellectual, even though he is very logical, but the same style he is doing at home, and he does mock his wife as well. He take his wife uh, some sentences or words too literally, instead of the other fact of the communication he does not do. So his wife is often not a happy wife with him, and he's still arguing, you know. So he believe on what she is saying only, without the background, without any emotional involvement, without any empathy. Let's put it in the other nutshell. Without empathy, if you are listening anything, you are too literally, and that is the breakup of some relationship, which even I witnesses. So let's start to just read a quick story of this Frank. So I would ask Jenny if you can read it, this story.
Frank was a computer programmer whose job demanded that he analyze information, focusing on what might be wrong or how a program could be improved. To succeed at his work, he had to pick information apart, listen to what could go wrong, and compute information in a logical, systematic manner. He was so busy analyzing what was communicated to him, he didn't have time to just be there with the other person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
His wife often told him he was a nitpicker. She felt he was overly critical of her and the children because he seldom accepted what she said. He would challenge her thought processes. He spent most of their communication time analyzing what she said as if he had to turn it into a program.
Yeah, he's a very bossy husband. Sometimes they do, and then of course that is very annoyable for the wife. Rak, if you can finish this story, please.
This listening pattern had a serious effect on his marriage and social life. After becoming aware of the pattern, he took steps to change it outside of his job. It took a lot of concentration and effort to change this pattern, but he said it was more than worth it.
Yes, thank you, Jenny and Rak. So this is a quick story, and it's a real story. It was a real story, uh, but later he realized that he was doing wrong. He was taking uh, too literally the meaning of the text of from his wife or family, and based on these two narrow-mindedness, he takes he becomes too critical, and of course, because too critical mean he will ignore the other dimensions of what she was saying, and then that often with us as well. Um, so in academically from the book, let's see quickly. We have a quick three paragraph, and then we will finish what the author is saying about being intellectual and logical. So I would ask Rek if she can read this. We have three quick paragraph. One Rek will read, then Jenny, and then third one I will read.
The intellectual listener listen mostly with their heads, hearing only what are mainly they want interested to hear, blotting out larger areas perhaps of reality.
Yeah, go ahead, please. You carry on, please. You
Oh,
finish the
sorry.
whole slide.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they are mainly interested in rational appraisal, perhaps as a result of their educational training, they tend to neglect the emotional and nonverbal aspects of the talker's behavior. Thus, they listen at level 2 only to the words rather than the whole message. The evaluation of what is said is most often geared to the interpretation of verbal statements, often causing them to miss the less obvious intent.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, yeah, Jenny, if you can do this.
They are not aware of how listening behavior affects others or how others affect them. They listen in terms of categories, making certain that what they listen to does not disturb their inner peace or systematic order. It is almost as if they are putting what the talker is saying into a computer's data bank. If a statement doesn't fit into a systematic logical sequence, their mind rejects what is said as invalid. I prefer to this process as getting into analysis paralysis.
Yeah, that is a very good point which author is making. It is this is a keynote you can take home. This one, like the psyche of these type of listener, like as a husband or as a wife or as a boss. Uh, so they they set their mind as a something computer, yeah. And what the talker is saying, they are processing word to word in their mind, and if there is any logical sequence make any sense for them, they accept it, otherwise they reject it, and they become too what is called too narrow minded, and they become too bossy, and they can insult other, they can become too much critical, and they start to argue, according to the rational, this is not a rational thought, it's too much irrational, why you are irrational, it's insane, what you talking about, It does not make any sense. That's you start to bang on the wife or the husband or the employee, and then of course the other person will say, why he or she did not understand me. I don't mean to say that. And then the other person say, no, you mean to say that. What does it mean? And that never ends, and that end with conflict. And that has been pointed out by author as an analysis paralysis. So this is the disability we have and people have, and they break their relationship. Many employees, they resign from the job. Oh, my boss is sick. He or she does not understand what I mean to say in the presentation, or I was not mean to say, but he took my word very too literally, and blah blah blah. And the same thing happen with the parents and children as well. So when child is narrating something or communicating with the dad or mom, and dad or mom is taking too literally, meaning, oh, what? How how you use that word? And now instead of checking or doing and feeling the background where the child is coming from and why she or he is using that word or particular term, now they become too angry, or how dare you can say you are not a good child, and that they break the hearts of the children as well. So that is a analysis paralysis, according to uh, the author. And the last thing, I will read it for you. The author of the in the book, she further tell us about that type of listener. She says these type of listener are so involved in programming what is being said that they miss out on the deeper meaning of what is spoken. These type of listener cut off experiencing through the sensory system, thus losing the opportunity to actually experience the event. Yeah, the brain is so busy making calculations that the body is not given the chance to feel the communication. As a result, nonverbal communication is disregarded. All this is happening because the listeners are blind to their own emotions and the emotions of others. It is too much authoritative type of listener, I think, but they are intellectual listener. They are very selective, very operative and offensive for the speaker as well. And now we understand why. So overall, the communication is the combination of verbal and non-verbal communication, both. Um, and that's why empathy is the greatest process for the communication, because in empathy, when you feel that I have to put his or his shoes in me and then feel, and that will understand his non-verbal and verbal comments from the talker or the speaker, and then I can respond. So that's it. Any question so far? Okay, Rex, and I know you mentioned that. I'm going to. Okay. Oh yes, that's all finished almost. I hope any question from anyone. Oh, hello, Angela Jones. She's on Facebook in the group. So that's it. So next, our lesson in the communication skill. In that course, we will learn about physical barrier between the listener and the speaker, semantic barrier between speaker and the listener, and one of very important and is about the external reality can make the poor communication or the wrong communication, that we will cover in coming next 2-3 weeks. So I hope you enjoyed this session or this class. If you have any question, please feel free to talk me, or you
I
can
want to
type
add
here.
something. I
Yes.
think something that I really got out of this class today, Maratib, when
Mm.
someone is talking to me and it's logical to them, that analysis paralysis you were talking about, where they just don't hear you because all they have in their head is, well, this is what makes
Yeah.
sense, blah blah. I've never really looked at it to where I could look at the person and maybe try to understand where they're coming from. Like, why would they almost like feel like they're discounting me, and that we're not communicating and there's some sort of a wall or a barrier. And if I can see that's where it's at for them and that's why they think that, I think it would make it a little easier to see where they're coming from, what they're
Yeah.
trying to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That is one of the point. Is a well made point. Also, another, I think one of the reason is I keep a distance from other people when we put a label on other, um, and therefore we try to become a limited listener to them, and we only are very choosy, very selective to take the words, and then by catching these words, we make our own, um, what we call action plan, um, as authoritative, as a bossy, or whatever I'm going to do. But this is all as a result of ego. We have ego. So if we are giving her too much love and respect to someone, to wife, to husband, to boss, or to, so obviously I will involve emotionally, literally, and other with fully, of course. Um, but we often, that is a clash between very educated people and the normal people as well. That why educated people make the space from other ordinary people who are not, who are less relatively educated, because of this narrow-mindedness, or this, I would say spiritually it is because of the ego-driven intellectual people they are as well. So that's it. Um, one quick question before I finish this thing. In our next session, there is a 3 question, and we are going to cover a very important topic in communication. Um, if you allow me, Rec, I can little interpret it. Otherwise, let's do this next week if you have a time. Okay. So one of the, you can note down this question on your computer. The It is very important and very difficult to separate the external reality and my own experience. And sometimes the external reality, I'm thinking that it is a real, but actually it is not real. That is only my own perception or my own experience internally, which is I'm doing. And therefore it make me a very poor listener, or it make me a very poor speaker, or because of my poor judgment. And I'm giving you these 3 questions, and you can answer me in the next session. That can you distinguish between the external reality and those things which happen internally in the person's experience? So these are the 3 situations. One situation is, Carl waited patiently as he stood at the counter reading a book. This is the situation. You need to think about what is external reality and what is his own personal experience. The second situation, I saw people being thoughtless and lacking in sensitivity. That is a second question and second situation. The third question or third situation, the man turned off the car lights and walked into a blue house. So these are three situations, and our job is to separate the external reality from my own internal experience. I don't need to mix it, or I don't need to uh, assume wrongly. That is the homework you can do at home, and we will read this thing in the next class in communication skills. I hope you enjoy this class, and let me see on the Facebook. Okay. So, Angela Jones, you have any question? And otherwise, we will go for the next session for it.